I'd like to welcome everyone to a new year of the Standout Skills webinar series. I'm George Miller, the Student Engagement Manager at Royce, and I'm joined today by our speaker, Rob Phaal of the Institute for Manufacturing. The aim of this series is to provide material science researchers with some of the supplementary skills and techniques that may not be encountered as part of a typical PhD programme. And today's talk hopes to continue the strong start that we made to the series in 2023. I'd just like to run through a few points of housekeeping before we start. All video mics should be off without the ability to switch them on from your end. This is just to keep distractions at a minimum and allow us all to focus on the speaker. There will be time for Q&A at the end, so if you do have any questions, please write them in the chat box for me to put to Rob. And you're welcome to submit questions during the talk as well. If you have to leave for any reason, the talk will be recorded and published on the Royce YouTube channel for viewing next week. And you can find all of the talks from our series so far on there, including how to make an academic website, 3D visualization using Blender, and writing academic CVs, among others. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Rob Phaal. Rob joined the Centre for Technology Management in 1997, which is a research group based at the Institute for Manufacturing at the University of Cambridge. His research focuses on strategic technology and innovation management, emergence of technology-based industry, and the development of practical management tools and tools. Rob has a mechanical engineering background with a PhD in computational mechanics and industrial experience in technical consulting, contract research, and software development. In his talk today, Rob will introduce road mapping concepts and practice and discuss its applicability to scientific research with the aforementioned Q&A, where he'll be able to address how road mapping can work for you in your particular area of material science. You may have seen that Royce have produced a number of roadmaps in the last few years, and they are a key tool in communicating research to policymakers and other stakeholders. So I know everyone's waiting, and without further ado, hand them over to you, Rob.
Thank you, George. I'm pleased to be here. The focus is on road mapping, of course. This is a method I've had a long-term interest in terms of applied research. So everything I'll be sharing really is based on quite a lot of personal experience. Let me see if I can get my slides to advance. There we go. So the main part of this is an overview of road mapping, both the concept and practice. It's a very practical tool, but the concepts that underpin it give it its real power in terms of being able to adapt it to virtually any strategic and innovation context. So I'll focus on that a bit as well. And then because of the PhD research focus here, I'll be talking a little bit about how you can use road mapping as a research instrument for longitudinal case studies. And then just a brief part at the end for those PhD students, how you might give it a go directly for navigating your research and what might happen after your research. And then we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A. So just a few points by way of context in terms of strategy. This simple framework called VUCA has been around for quite a long time. It basically highlights some of the challenges associated with strategy. Strategy is always concerned with quite big decisions that have long-term implications. And therefore these factors come into play, that everything's changing all the time. Some things change quick, some things slower. There can be disruptions, and you have to accommodate that. And those facts lead to a lot of uncertainty. Further out you look, of course, the uncertainty grows. But also there's a lot of uncertainty about today. You have partial knowledge, and gaining knowledge costs a lot of money and time. And yet we still have to make decisions given that fact. But you can manage that, the risks associated with that, and do the best you can so that you're more confident in your decisions. There's a lot of complexity in the systems we're dealing with, which makes things challenging, and also a lot of ambiguity. And what I mean by that is often there are a lot of different perspectives and stakeholders involved in these complex systems. And they'll have different backgrounds, motivations, and communication and language can be problematic and hinder progress there. And road mapping can be part of the solution to addressing these challenges, but you can't eliminate them all. It's just the nature of reality, unfortunately. So, a bit of history. Road mapping wasn't dreamt up in universities. It was developed by industry to help address those problems. Nobody knows exactly where it came from, but as far as we can tell, it emerged in the USA in the 1960s in high-tech sectors such as aerospace, semiconductors, energy systems. So we found early examples from NASA, Lockheed Martin, and some electronics firms. And this one of the techniques they developed then to get to the moon. The technology became very complex and advanced in that stage, and you needed structured, systematic methods, particularly in the technical system. So road mapping is often called technology road mapping because of that focus. I don't tend to use that term too often unless the focus is on the technical system, because it's a very generic technique that can be applied everywhere, and technology may just be one part of the solution. And even technology roadmaps do not only focus on the technology, because technology without context and application is a cost, not a value. It's very flexible. It's been adapted and adopted widely across the world at firm and sector levels. The one interesting observation is it's been entirely ignored by business schools for 60 plus years, which is strange. So many managers who could make you good use of the technique just simply do not know about it. My assumption is that because of this association with technology, it's been assumed that it's really only for technologists, which is not the case at all. I think all managers and senior executives should know about the technique. Now, basically, I'll come to definition in a minute, but roadmaps are structured visualizations, basically. And this set of 20 just illustrates the degrees of freedom you have in articulating your strategic thinking visually. You can demonstrate yourself with a Google image search, although you have to filter out things that may be not roadmaps as I think of them, because it's a metaphor, of course, about finding a way forward. And the metaphor travels a lot faster than the discipline, particularly because it's not covered in mainstream business research textbooks and teaching. This set of 20 is actually 5% of a larger research set we have. They're not just grabbed from the internet, they're from documents, which provide a lot of the context for these visualizations. The visual alone is hard to interpret. It must come with a narrative. People present these, but also they'll be found in strategy documents and innovation documents. The only point I'll make here is, even if you squint, and obviously you can't see the details of these thumbnails, you'll see some, like number 14 there, that are quite complex, and others which are very simple, like version specimen 1. And the key point there, I think, is you ought to work at two levels. You need to get into the detail and the systematic approach, and road mapping is a systems tool, shown in figure 14, helps you really understand all of the components of the system and how things have to fit together moving forward towards some sort of goal. But that's not a great way to communicate the core messages outside of the community who use that in a much more operational way. And so it's always wise, I think, to, once you have that understanding, to think about how you communicate outwards with a much simpler core message. And specimen 1 is an example of that. I've seen many examples where people take, say, a version like 14 to the board for funding, and it just doesn't engage. People can't engage with that complexity immediately. Version 1 is good for that first conversation. And then, of course, when there are questions, and then you can refer to the more detailed version, and people be much more comforted by the fact that there's a lot behind that simple diagram. Working at the simple level only is simplistic and a bit shallow. Now, although that's good practice, it's rarely done. The best and just about only example I have is for fusion energy, a great PhD study from the Open University. Richard Pearson embedded himself in tokamak energy, just south of Oxford. The exciting thing about fusion is it's a bit like SpaceX. There's a lot of private enterprise and investment going into fusion now, small fusion, and that's a pretty sure sign that we're going to get it, I think, because the heavy lifting has been done with international and national programs. there's a paper on this and everything else if anyone's interested. The version on the left, which has been redacted a bit, is something you'll never see. And this is because it's highly confidential. This will be in the program office in the company and used internally to guide their strategy. And this is one of the barriers to learning about road mapping is at the company level anyway, roadmaps are usually very confidential and very, very few examples are available. And if they are available, they will have been generally redacted or you don't really know if they're real data. This is real, but it's just some of the program names and concepts have been generalized. And that's been highly designed. It's a very nice visual for that purpose. The one on the right is for external communication to investors because this company needs money. And that's also had a lot of design put in for different community and different purpose. There's a lot of meaning there, actually. Those are flux lines that are shown there and in the plasma. And the shape is meant to represent sort of open innovation, heading towards the center point there where basically they cracked the core problem and they can get more energy out for a small period of time than in. And at that point, the floodgates of investment will open up. And on the right-hand side, many, many applications can be supported by successful fusion. I know this is primarily a materials community, so I've found an example we were involved with relating to graphene. And I'd like to think that visualization on the right there was worth €1 billion because this was part of winning the bid for the largest European program, the EU flagship for graphene. At the time, there were 3 consortia bidding that had got through the earlier stages and were bidding in the final round. And one of them was led by a colleague in electrical engineering in Cambridge. And my colleague, Clive Kerr, helped them to condense a 120-page complex technical proposal to a 3-minute pitching roadmap. And I'm pretty sure that helped them get the money because they could explain in 3 minutes the core concepts that they're trying to achieve. On the left there is the final design sketch. This is a day with that community. And they didn't know each other very well. So by co-creating this visualization, they all got on the same page. The basic format, I'll just explain the basic narrative here. It was bespoke, new format, a visual format specifically for this, but you could repurpose it. On the left-hand side, we have the current situation, an interesting new material with unique and interesting properties. On the right-hand side are some transformative changes that could be made to at least 3 sectors. There are others as well, but they focus on those 3, IT, energy, and health. To get there, starting at the bottom, we have to work out how to produce graphene at scale. And then we need to develop that into components in the middle. And at the top there, integrate those components into systems. Now, the blue is the university work share, and the pinkish color is the industry work share. And in the middle, these are called Sankey diagrams, where the width of the line represents dimension, in this case, effort. And that's the core story and the structure of this roadmap. And when you find an example you like, even if it's in a different domain, you can often adapt it for your particular interests. This diagram was used a lot. It actually got onto the front cover of Nanoscale magazine and was used throughout the program for external comms. Internally, of course, they'd have much more detailed roadmaps to coordinate their program. So what's a roadmap definition? Often academics start with definitions. It took us about 20 years to work out what we think a roadmap in general really is in a compact and meaningful definition. And so it's a fairly recent publication. We think a roadmap is a structured visual chronology of strategic intent, and every word there has meaning. Strategic intent is there because we don't have a crystal ball. It's about what we intend to do. And as we move forward, our understanding will change and we'll update our roadmap. So it's meant to be a dynamic navigational aid, not a fixed plan. That's a deadly mistake to make. And that's why I've shown it in the slightly sketch form. The best roadmaps are work in progress. The polished ones you see online are there for more polished communications. You may not have any awareness of how it's actually used, which might be a flip chart on the wall with post-it notes and used to have strategic conversations on a more regular basis. Structure, well, you can see some structure here. On the left-hand side, we have some themes. This is a full innovation picture, how technology is developed into products and services to meet market needs, and a timeline. And that's a key feature of road mapping. If it doesn't have a timeline, or at least sequence of activities, I wouldn't regard it as a roadmap. It's clearly visual. And chronology, it really brings in two words, the timeline, but also it's about storytelling and narrative. In order to develop the roadmap, you want to make sure you've got a narrative within each theme and also each time frame. And that helps you develop a coherent strategic plan, but also then to communicate it. The definition of the road mapping process, and people often say there's more value in the process of creating and using the roadmaps than the actual roadmap itself, is a little bit trickier because often you see a trivial definition that road mapping is the process of developing roadmaps. And I can easily demonstrate that not to be the case because I've often used it without roadmaps. It's a way of having conversations. And one of the great benefits of the early iterations in particular is to use road mapping as a problem-solving and diagnostic tool to develop an understanding of what you know and don't know strategically about your situation. And so we're really using the framework and the background of the content for road mapping. And so that's what that slightly confusing sentence is about. It's really about a framework to organize knowledge, all the knowledge relevant for endeavor in one coherent place. And that's what the temporal spatial structured strategic lens is all about. It's the data that and information and knowledge you need for your strategy has position in time and space in terms of vertical and horizontal position in the system of interest. A paper on this as well, if you're interested. So the general form of roadmaps took quite a while to work out. Very widely used in industry, very confusing, all of those visualizations. But what emerged after exploring road mapping in a huge range of contexts was this generic form, which is universal. So if ever I'm really confronted with a novel application, I'll revert back to this and start populating this framework with information and then start structuring that information to give the level of granularity you need. And it's really a simple 3x3 grid. One axis gets devoted to time, the when question. And we break that down into three broad questions, typically starting on the right-hand side to establish what good looks like in the future. Where do we want to go to? Because without an understanding of that, you really can't decide if you're in a good place now. It's not prescriptive. If you're working with incremental innovation, you might well start on the left, but the default is on the right. With that understanding, we can then establish where we are now. And the strengths and weaknesses of our position. And the middle of the roadmap is really about how do we bridge that gap? How can we get there? And you'll see the roadmap doesn't answer those questions. It's up to you and other frameworks to remove those question marks. Its function is to organize that information and integrate everything together. The vertical axis by convention should always contain three broad perspectives. The top by convention addresses the question of why do we need to act? What's driving us? What's the motivation? What benefits do we seek? What goals do we want to achieve? The middle, the heart of the roadmap is what are we going to do about it? The tangible things. What kind of product? What kind of service do we want to develop to meet those needs at the top? And the bottom layer by convention is the resources. How are we going to do it? And technology is a knowledge-based resource and would typically be found at the bottom, along with other resources such as money and skills, infrastructure, and so forth. Now, on the left there, you'll see those 6 questions: why, what, how, when, who, and where. That's sometimes referred to as the 5W1H question in a framework in consulting. Now, 4 of those questions are baked into the architecture of the roadmap, which is why it's such a flexible tool. 2 of them, also very important, particularly the who, are more implicit and have or within the data, but not built into the structure. So have to be sort of made more visible. Now, the other point here is, as a systems tool, that general framework doesn't show that, but you need to structure it. And once you have data relevant to the problem, you can start to organize it into themes, which classically represented as layers in the roadmap, or metadata for the objects on the roadmap. And that's a systems approach, looking at the focal system in the middle, but also the demand side functions of the system at the top and the supply side functions at the bottom. And you can tune the granularity to top down to be just enough to give you confidence. You don't want to overstructure it. So some parts of the roadmap may have lighter structure. Other parts, particularly the technology, often might go 5 or 6 levels down in the hierarchy. That's where a lot of the complexity lies in many systems. So the way I think of it now is to separate out the canvas, the organizing principle, the why, what, how, when, and the structure and so on, which includes both the internal and external demand and supply sides. And that's, you can overlay information of any type on that structure, good or bad information. The roadmap does not care. You have to decide about goodness. It can equally organize and communicate bad strategy just as well as good strategy. And that's where a lot of other tools and technique come into play to help analyze different parts of the system. And they tend to have a much greater focus. The roadmap provides the big picture. And the key point to realize, I think, is that the roadmap is not just a data artifact you file away on a computer system or filing cabinet. It's most powerful when you understand that it represents the range of stakeholders who have to be involved in success of any initiative. And we've always focused on the human side of road mapping. You can do a lot of analysis, of course, as well, and feed that into roadmaps. But in the end, if people who are going to be responsible for implementing the strategy aren't involved, that roadmap and strategy is going to have little traction. So every layer, perspective, and object represents different stakeholder views and will be owned and by different people and stakeholders. And the connections between those objects actually represent social contracts or real contracts and agreements. And so the roadmap becomes the single point of truth, if you like, around which everyone can conduct their part of the activity, understanding how it fits into the bigger picture and who else is responsible for other elements of the strategic plan. So you can think of the roadmap as really serving the purpose of the picture on the jigsaw puzzle box. Everyone owns a piece of the jigsaw, but there's value only once you assemble all the pieces. And that's really what the roadmap is doing. And if you have ever tried to do a jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the box, it's pretty challenging. Now, in practical terms, the way we've always applied this is in this format. So we get all of the relevant stakeholders together, and then we use that roadmap structure to organize conversations. And we empower people to contribute their views using the amazing technology of the Post-it note. And so everyone gets to have their say, equal opportunities. That's not a roadmap, that big chart. We call it a landscape. We're just gathering all the information together. We haven't really worked out what our strategy is yet. You can see on the left-hand side, we've provided a knowledge structure. This is for an energy system in a company. Quite a lot of structure there. And then we're using that as a resource, that landscape, to identify landmarks, interesting features in the landscape where we want to dive deeper. And quite commonly, that's innovation opportunities. And this is a one-day process. We spend a long time getting a repeatable functional process into a day, because people will give you a day of their time. It's a big ask for more. And if they have a really good experience in the first day, they'll carry on. And so it's an agile approach, really. How quickly can you get some resolution on the issues and challenges motivating the process? In the afternoon, in parallel small multifunctional teams, we unpack those opportunities into exploratory roadmaps. And you can see this is a roadmap. It's got narrative basically for each of those. And then at the end of the day, we might have looked at 8 in this case. We had about 25 people. 4 of them, as I recall, were taken forward, and the other 4 were people said that's not as interesting as we thought it was. And that's basically how all these workshops work. They're people having conversations with post-it notes, using these management frameworks and tools as the canvas, which provides a logic for those discussions. This is just zooming in on a middle layer of one of those landscapes. And you can see, I mean, post-it notes are super flexible. There's no learning curve, nothing crashes, or the post-it notes can fall on the ground, which is why we use sellotape to pin them down once things are stable. But this, in this process, we had prioritized the trends and drivers, and then we're capturing ideas which could respond to them. And these numbers here are coded to the trends and drivers that this opportunity related to. These 2 post-it notes were similar, so they're clustered together to become one idea. And these dots are the opinions of experts in the room. And we're using different colors for different business units. This was a corporate application. We didn't want the small business units' views to be swamped by the large ones. So all very simple and crude. You don't want to over play the accuracy of these techniques. It's a first pass. And what it sets you up for is a whole bunch of actions to go and weigh and find more information and validate the findings. But if you can get the right people in the room, it's amazing how far you can get into a problem. We call these fast start techniques. They're usually the opening gambit, if you like, the first iteration. Sometimes that's enough and people have resolved their issues. This is a small biogas entrepreneur who is just in half a day capturing his thinking on the wall. And you can see on the right-hand side here, the unit price was very clear to this entrepreneur because there are competing products in the market, but he had little idea of the size of the market and the manufacturing costs. So that's what he needs to work on after this workshop. Now, there's lots of software available for road mapping, but most of them are not really human-centric. They're more databases with a front end, not suitable really for these discussions. But digital whiteboards are pretty close. And so certainly over COVID and actually before then, we were experimenting with these because there's a huge logistical cost to these workshops. So you can emulate these processes pretty well online in a distributed manner, some benefits and some drawbacks. This little experiment was done before COVID to just keeping the social system the same, having a group of people having a discussion, one on paper and post-it notes and the other on a digital platform, a touch screen using a digital whiteboard, just to start to get some understanding of the pros and cons and trade-offs associated with the digital platform. As soon as COVID hit, then you couldn't get together, of course, and you can run these processes in a distributed way. My view now is you can probably reduce the demand for getting together face-to-face by, a large amount, maybe 75%. It still pays sometimes to get together, especially when you're starting off and building relationships and trust. We've worked out that it pays to put some visual design into the templates as well as the final roadmaps. You get much better results if you embody the concepts of innovation and the guidance that a facilitator would provide into the template itself. That website there, you can download this template and many others. This particular template was designed for early stage technology innovation, really. So that might be of interest to you in your research. I won't go into the depths, but the basic concepts are we code in the reference process in green. Step 1 on the right, what does the future look like? Step 2 on the left, where we are now. Step 3, can we bridge the gap, etc. And everything in light gray is prompt but not prescriptive. So a whole bunch of questions. For example, is regulation important for you? If it is, deal with it. If it's not, forget about it. And we found a step change in improvement in performance on all measures by this general principle, so we use it all the time. Now, one of the key features of road mapping, one of the benefits, is it deals with a massive problem we've got of proliferation of strategy tools and frameworks. Since the 1960s, when sort of, I guess, management became serious as a discipline, there's been a proliferation of tools due to an overproductive consulting and academic community, leaving managers in a real mess. Because you don't really get ahead in consulting and academia without having a shiny new tool. But actually, a lot of it's not really helpful. So the interesting thing about this from the Boston Consulting Group is they don't include road mapping because of this gap in mainstream business teaching. And it's the one tool that can help with this problem of proliferation because it integrates all the other tools which have a more specific focus. So I've never found another management tool or framework which can't be better understood through the lens of road mapping, and its function in the strategy process can be resolved as to which question marks does it remove. So if you have a really big question mark on the right-hand side about the future, scenario planning is a tool that's specifically designed to resolve that question mark. And the same goes for all other tools and techniques. So briefly now, if you're in research, if your example, maybe a bit less in technical research, but if you want to understand the position of your technical research in the wider sweep of technology innovation, then perhaps this will be helpful, is we extended the time horizon to the past. I won't go through the detail here, but this is one example of many we've done of how did digital cameras emerge. Because we're trying to understand how do high-value industries of the future emerge from today's science and technology base. And to understand the dynamics of that process, we can look at high-value industries of today and then look back at the pathway from the original scientific breakthrough. And we looked at about 25 different technologies and sectors to develop some general principles. And the basic point is the road mapping technique, you just extend the timeline to the left and use all the same principles to get the big picture of a system and its evolution on one page. And it's great as a tool also in companies to understand their past, and so they don't make the same mistakes again, hopefully. And you can do it in a workshop format through interviews or just desk research, if you can find historical accounts. And what we found, these are the general pattern, which will be relevant to you, is the process that from science to market value. And this is rather ignored, these earlier stages in classic models from business schools. They're only really interested once all of the interesting science technology stuff has happened. So we extended this tail back to its origins. And then we defined, could identify 4 clear phases: when science dominated, technology dominated, application dominated, and market dominated. We're not really interested in this because you can go to the business school textbooks for that. We found also that this might be in the universities, this phase in industry research labs, this will be in industry business units. And the other problem with these models, these life cycle models in general, is they have some instantaneous shift from this quasi-stable state to that one. And this line is the most interesting thing. And so we find that actually takes time as well. And so with all of these retrospective maps, we've inserted transitional phases, which might be 5 years long in their own right. So we call this the STAM model, with the transitions being sort of a hyphen between each of those capital letters. And you have to put a lot of energy in to convince downstream people that your interesting scientific study is valuable to them, so industry will start investing. And we've built that into the templates for prospective road mapping into the future. That template I showed you earlier incorporates these ideas. And with the benefit of hindsight, retrospective road mapping, we could see clear events that demarcated these phases and transitions, which are all about demonstrating something downstream. These earlier ones cost money, and then money has started to be generating. So these have all been defined, and this is all in a paper. If you're interested, just drop me an email. Now, quite a few of our PhD students have used this as a longitudinal case study tool. And this particular one is focusing on technology venture development. So the pathways that technology ventures go through from when they're founded out of often university science teams through to success or failure in the market. And Yuta Hirose looked at about 50 different ventures around the world using these post-it note techniques to engage with the entrepreneurs. I won't go through the detail, but this is how he presented his results. Each venture had a map. And then he actually was interested in their understanding of how market uncertainty changed over time and technical uncertainty. And of course, it's a bit more volatile than one might hope because new information comes along and uncertainty can go up as well as down. Ideally, people wanted to narrow smoothly down, but life's not like that. And again, the same process, he looked at 50 and he could abstract some general principles, which he built into a template for prospective road mapping to help ventures embarking on their journey now build confidence about their path forward. So last little bit, if you're interested in road mapping, the best thing you can do is have a go. You can look at that website earlier, my website, which has lots of templates you could use, or design your own template even better for to navigate your PhD if you're in the earlier stages and beyond. And that might be more relevant to you further down the PhD journey. If you want to see something really happen from your PhD, whatever pathway might be appropriate, you might start a company or you might do consulting or something. You can use road mapping at a personal level, just to clarify things in your own mind, or perhaps with a team of people if you're planning to create a spin-out company. Now, this example's pre-prepared. I did if I was with you for half a day, I'd have you have a go yourself. This is from a PhD program, European one called Einstein, a couple of years ago. I went to Barcelona for half a day, and this is a little bit of a structure, slightly customized to them. You'll see the Einstein word there, but it might give you a sense of a structure that you might use for your own PhD. You know, what are you trying to, you're not trying to get a PhD, that's my main goal, but if you want to change the world, what social impact, environmental, economic impact do you hope to have from your PhD? What's your goals and targets that you're aiming for over the duration of your PhD? And on the right-hand side here, a bit less structure because it depends on what you want to do, but beyond your PhD. These are sort of aspects, work streams, if you like, that might be relevant to your PhD. This is a program commitments. People were funded by EU, so they had some extra commitments specific to that. Other things that I hadn't thought of. And these are the sort of capabilities you need to develop and deploy in your PhD. Some general ones: research capabilities, outreach, engagement with industry and so forth, various skills and other things. And of course, you need some money, infrastructure, lab, equipments, networks, etc. So if you're interested in road mapping, I'd highly encourage you just to play around with the technique for an hour or two. That's all you need to get your head around the technique and, more importantly, your hands. And I advise you just a piece of paper, a pen, and post-it notes are great because nothing's set in stone. You can move things around, take them off, throw them away, and so forth. So whatever you're interested in, it doesn't have to be linked to your PhD. It can be any strategic topic. Be as clear as you can about the purpose, scope, and focus. You need to structure, so throw data onto that general model and organize it into themes, and iterate fast, because 80-20 rule, you get a lot of benefit very quick and then it'll diminish. Better to stand back then and say, what have you learned about your topic and what do you do next? Usually getting a bit more information. And if you want to have a go, there's quite a few templates and examples on that website.